Rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Welcome back to the webinar. This is the third time lucky. I really want to apologize for the morning, the way things were not organized. I would like to acknowledge my co-author, Dr. Mustafa Farouk, who is also online. And if there are any tricky questions, then you can put it to him. Alhamdulillah, that Dr. Mustafa Farouk is well known in the literature, particularly in Halal literature. He has contributed very generously, and Alhamdulillah was recognized in the top 500 contributors in the Halal economy sector. Myself, and he's also, Dr. Mustafa is also currently the president of FIANS, our national umbrella organization of Muslims. So Alhamdulillah, we have got a scientist who's also serving the community. As far as myself, I have been involved, of course, with the FIANS as well. I was president for 12 years. And I'm a scientist, but a different kind of scientist coming from environmental background. But nonetheless, I've had interest in halal, and I have contributed in the area of halal as much as I could. Currently, I'm the CEO of New Zealand Islamic Products and Services Limited. It is a consulting as well as an export business, and it deals. So now I know what it is to be in that business and what is important from that perspective. Brothers and sisters, we are in unprecedented times, and this has been put on us. I understand that 150 odd countries are struggling with the issue of COVID-19. And the only way forward seems to be to stop this is to really have a social isolation. And then this has been taken into an extreme end where a lot of countries, they are going through the lockdown period to avoid at least 4 to 6 weeks of social contact between people so that we can get over this. So that's the backdrop under which we are looking at. And of course, that I will be going to the next slide, which is a food security index. This was first published in The Economist in 2015. And I looked for a recent one, so I couldn't find. This is, I think that for all intensive purposes, the picture has not changed much. What you see in green color, these are the countries which have got sufficient food production and good food security index that they can feed their own people, not only their own people, but they have surplus which they export out. The countries at the other extreme end, which you will see, is the red color, dark red color, that is most in the Africa and some parts of Asia as well. Obviously, that these countries, because of the climatic conditions and because historically they haven't really regarded agriculture that strongly, and hence they are in the low food security index zone. That what it means is that they will be relying on food which has to come out from somewhere else or live in the sustainable level of food. The yellow ones, they certainly are in the middle zone, and they perhaps a lot of them have got better resources to buy food from outside. So the food, when we put it in simply, when we talk about food, we're talking about all food. But if we look at more specifically the meat and poultry, halal foods are coming from predominantly from Islamic perspective, is that places where the Muslims are living in minority and is going to the places where the Muslims are living in majority. There has been a shift, and if we look at the New Zealand meat export data, particularly from our perspective, we see there's a lot of meat is from New Zealand exported to countries in affluent countries where the Muslims now are as a diaspora are living and residing. So keep this picture in mind, and it is therefore it's very important that we have good relationship. Muslim majority countries should have a good relationship with the people Muslims who are living in minorities, because they are their eyes and ears in terms of maintaining the integrity of halal in those systems, in those countries. So typically, non-Muslim countries are responsible for 80% of the food that is exported to Muslim countries, and many other countries which necessarily if they are not Muslims. Say, for example, in New Zealand, which has got a population of 5 million approximately, it produces meat, dairy, seafood, fruits, etc., sufficient to feed 45 million people. So as a fact of that about 90% of our product is really exported out as a high quality food throughout the world. When it comes to meat, New Zealand exports to nearly 120 different countries. Similarly, in United States, Australia, Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina, etc., they export large quantities of meat and poultry to other parts of the world. In the last 10 years or 15 years, the trend that in China and India, they are exporting a lot of processed food and heat and eat a type of food to many countries, as our lifestyle is changing and people still want to have the food which authentic food they can eat, and hence they have carved out a significant market out there. Turkey is another country which has emerged as a good player in that space. My talk is going to be more specifically than now from now on, concentrating on the management of it is from the meat sector. So we will be talking about that, how the halal certification is working in globally, where the meats are exported from to the Muslim markets. And on the left hand side, just a simple flow diagram which shows on one end in yellow color the halal certifying bodies, which are nearly 320 or 330 roughly. Federation of Islamic Association, FIANS, is one such body which does the certification of halal meat. And on the other side in green, which we have got importing countries, they have their authorities which are responsible to make sure that the meat which comes out, or the poultry which comes out, or the food which comes out to their countries from outside, that it meets the requirements for the consumers and specifically the halal consumers. And these authorities are typically like the Saudi Food and Drug Authority. You've got JAKIM in Malaysia. You've got GCC covering the Gulf. You've got MUI in Indonesia, and so on and so forth. There is traditionally, when this started, there was a very strong relationship between HCB and the importing countries. The diagrams, or the flow diagram, which I show, is there seemed to be one-way traffic from HCB to importing countries. It used to be two-way traffic, but things have changed. And then in the middle, you have those countries which are exporting. They are developing their own standards which comply with the importing countries' standards. Such as in New Zealand, we implemented in 2010 a halal notice, which takes care of some of these standards which are around the world, and trying to simplify the sector here in New Zealand so that it complies with the markets. And now there is more attempt between the importing countries' authorities and the New Zealand authorities, and sometimes the halal certifying bodies on the yellow, they are left in lurch, and it seems to be the G2G relationship, which are the way people are going. And another element which has crept into to do ISO. And ISO we all know that it has got nothing to do with halal. It's a paper trail looking at the system. So our focus is making sure that we need to make sure that the products are halal. When somebody says it's halal, they put the stamp, they put the certificate. It meets those criteria. So, and if the HCB and the importing countries authorities, if they don't keep in touch with each other, not just through one-way traffic, but two-way traffic, and give importance and respect to each other, then at some point you will be relying on, importing countries will be relying on the information which is provided at a G to G level, which may sometimes fudge the factors. Right, so this simply that the on the right-hand side are just prescribed in a very simple word, described in a very simple word, that documented standard operating procedures of the halal, of various halals. They are implemented at the plant level. Muslim slaughtermen, they do the slaughtering, and then on-site Muslim lead person usually is appointed at each plant, which just keeps an eye that everything is really, the standard operating procedure is being followed. And there are regular external audits. Some of them are random audits, some are announced audit, which are done by the HOs, that is authorized halal organizations. And they are, in this case, like say we're talking about FIANS. And then based on those things, then the certificates are issued by HOs based on the reports. So that's a very simple model which operates. My colleague, Dr. Mustafa Farouk, he tried to capture the New Zealand model, how it works. And this picture might seem very complicated to you on the screen, but let me just take a minute to explain to you that there are on the bottom of that you've got meat companies, which are in the dotted line, which we have put it. These meat companies, they are member on the top, which you look at New Zealand Meat Industries Association in on the left-hand side. They join voluntarily, but most of them are member of New Zealand Meat Industry Association, right? So, and these companies, the different various in these companies, they actually send their products to global market. As I said, roughly about 120 destinations in the world. And in between the meat companies and the red, which is the MPI, called New Zealand Ministry of Primary Industries, which is, in this case, is a regulator, if you like. They have agreed to a standard, halal standards, which FIANS as an organization has to implement. On the top of that, where MPI is, you will see in the middle, it's called Halal Standard Advisory Council. This council was set up with having the professionals, scientists, RMs, who were part of that, and they and regulator just simply sat in there, and the industry representative, they sat in there to just observe that what were the key issues were being discussed, and the ruling or the advice which Halal Standard Advisory Council gave to the regulator, that usually was followed. Since 2014, certainly this has flipped. Now that MPI is sitting on top, and Halal Standard Advisory Council has assumed a subservient role, if you like, and it is less important now in the system. And that's what I mean, is that when G to G arrangements are made, then you are deprived of having a local eye and influence to make sure that the halal is not compromised. Not saying that it is compromised, but certainly there is a potential of, and we need to be wary of. So after describing that where the meat comes from, where the food comes from, and what type of systems are operated in terms of halal certification of meat and authentication of meat, we are now faced into this pandemic and lockdowns. And I'm just going to use the New Zealand example in this case, but I'm sure that it will be applicable to many other places. So we had level 3 restriction, where it was permissible for the halal supervisors or auditors to go at the plant level and audit, whereby, like say, the risk which were described, that the community transmission is occurring or multiple clusters are breaking out, is still there was a room for auditing. Here, government put lots of these restrictions. These are mandatory, if you like, range of measures which are travels and the mass gathering and public venues closing, alternative ways of working are being looked at, and little to no face-to-face primary care consultation, and we like I say, the services were open which were just necessary. From this phase to the next phase, which is the level 4 alert, which almost makes it mandatory, not almost makes it, it is mandatory on the citizens that they cannot move out. They remain in their own bubble, so to say, and that if you, wherever you're living, you just be with those people and manage your work, whatever you have to do through the help of internet. And thank God we have got that, otherwise we'll be in real problems. So the range of measures which have been suggested by the government, they are very restrictive. And in this case, the halal auditors are not allowed to travel and cannot go because they cannot leave the bubble. So how do we then, in that scenario where we are relying on the AHOs to really be there and supervise and see that the system is being operated as it should be, and there are enough checks and balances, and those and there's no lapse? How do we really manage ourselves in that and make sure that it is halal? The products are halal, and when the certification is done, it meets those criteria. This is the challenge for Muslims, not only in New Zealand but throughout and for the markets. So this has created a new paradigm, and we need to be really thinking ourselves that how do we really address those issues. And not only the technical solutions, I may say, that also that our muftis and scholars, they need to be aware of and think of that they need to have the agility to deal with the issues. So the impact of the lockdown on halal auditing. Of course, the one is that your AHOs or halal certifying bodies, whatever you call, they are absent from the production side. That's the fact. So, and even if they were not able to do, then overseas halal authorities such as JAKIM or GCC or Saudi Food and Drug or who they are, they can't come because the borders are closed. They can't go to the plant. So there's absolutely no way for either two of those entities to be present and verify and certify. In this case, in New Zealand case, it is food production has been seen as one of the essential work, and in this case, the only essential workers, that is only halal slaughtermen, they are having access to go to work because they are the one who will start the process. Obviously, they are deemed that they are necessary. They are the only one who can go, and with the limitation which is imposed on maintaining distance and do's and don'ts of the new working environment. But that is what we have. So there is limited or no audit of premises. That those are, as I stated earlier on. And as a result of that, then we are relying on the goodwill of the plant management to follow the standard operating procedure, which has been agreed under the halal operating system. So, and I'm not saying that they are abused, but nonetheless, the degree of satisfaction for me as a halal consumer is really in question. There are, like say, that have been cases where the halal auditor can ask the halal management, the plant management, to take a phone and show it on the phone that how process is working, which is okay, but is not really satisfactory, if you know what I mean. So the impact of the lockdown on the reliability of halal is that from two ends. Producers' responsibility is that they need to stick to and adhere to the standard operating procedures. They also need to look at that they need to make greater investment in technology, which will allow the surveillance and the auditing from remote access areas, from remote access by the auditors, so they can have a look at. The other aspect is, if they allow that, there's a loss of privacy of producer and the workers, that they don't want to be seen in, that they would like to know that they have been observed or they've been seen, so they can make sure that, yeah, their privacy is not compromised. And on the other hand, if this scenario, which we have got, say, 4 weeks initially, it is likely in New Zealand case might increase at least 6 weeks to 8 weeks. If it goes to that long period, how do we really ensure that as a certifier that and as a producers of the product which goes with the stamp of halal, that it is meeting all those requirements? So there is a responsibility in terms of importing countries to serve no, and the exporting countries, both of those, to really have a disclosure to the consumers that how the product is being produced and how the authentication is being done. Importing countries' responsibility towards consumer on how to balance between availability of essential goods to consumer and imposing a stricter regulatory framework on exporting countries, that how this must be complied with. Remember that the food security issue is a huge issue, and in this environment, when we're seeing the behaviors of our global leaders, that everybody is for themselves, if you can recall that the snatching of some of the PPE equipment, which was supposed to go somewhere else, but no, US said that no, we have the first right to have it, and it's not going anywhere. So it will come out in the food security area as well. And if the FAO and the global logistics statistics to believe that there is going to be more constraint on logistics, and hence the movement of goods will be limited or restricted, and hence from food security perspective, the governments need to make sure that their consumers are getting the food for their sustenance. These are some of our ideas, that how do we manage certification during lockdown. One of the things is that because the halal slaughtermen, they are seen to be essential and they can have access, that they need to be trained as auditor. Currently, the halal slaughtermen, they are employed by the processing plants. So they are employee of the plant. And what we're suggesting is that they could be employed by AHOs, and they one of them becomes the the auditor. He's trained and he becomes an auditor, so he keeps an eye and he assumes that role of auditing in that system where the access is not an issue then. Plants need to give access to conduct audit through cameras, agree on timing and frequency, from pre-slaughter areas to scanning to packaging, to look at all that aspects independently from remote access facility. So there needs to be that agreement and ethics and all that sorted in that area, so that it gives, as an AHO, gives satisfaction, yes, that I've been able to look at it, I can see that it is going okay. Areas, if there are concerns, I can raise it. Plants need to keep video recording, which is to be made available to the certification bodies, AHOs, for random checking of the process and the system. Most plants, they do in New Zealand, they do recording and they keep it for a certain period. And so what we're saying is that now, since they're doing that recording, that is to be, and this is mainly done for making sure that the plant is running effectively and efficiently. So we would like to, the AHOs should have access to those so that they can go through that as well, as and when that is required. The halal certification bodies, they need to have the ability to communicate in real time with the slaughterman, to ask questions, to make sure that the process is followed diligently. There should be an ability for third party to audit primarily, like say AHOs, using virtual technology, as I mentioned earlier on. From the viewpoint of the importing countries, they need to have ability to verify that halalness of the meat at the point of receipt is what it is. So in conclusion, the pandemic lockdown poses significant challenge for the halal certifying bodies, AHOs, and processing plants to demonstrate transparency in halal auditing system. There could be that because people know that the auditors are not coming or it's infrequent, then there could be a relaxed attitude of processors during lockdown period, which can compromise halal integrity of halal certification system. And I think that we're asking the question, how can halal authentication be tightened to ensure confidence in the halal auditing and food production systems? Surveillance cameras and virtual technologies can potentially be used to audit meat and poultry plants. However, more integrated technology may provide a way forward, and this could be beyond the lockdown period. If somebody who's operating a nuclear plant can have a full access to sitting at their home, that technology is now available at a very cheap rate where you could implement those things very effectively. Also, in this emerging scenario, that Muslim scholarship needs to provide some guidance on how such an integrated approach be adopted, where we may not be present there physically as an auditor, to ensure that supply of halal and tayyib food continues. Thank you very much for listening to us. And I would like to invite my co-author, Dr. Mustafa, to make a brief comment on this as well. Dr. Mustafa.
Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Anwar Ghani, for presenting and addressing this subject very well. Jazakallah khairan to all the listeners and the individuals who organized this conference. First of all, I congratulate them for being very creative and taking opportunities during this lockdown around the world to provide us an avenue for us to interact and to continue to support, halal and halal certification around the globe. Yes, I don't have much to add, from what Dr. Anwar Ghani already, mentioned. And I think what is important is that this happened now, and many of us have not experienced anything like this during our lifetime. So this will, give us an opportunity to prepare properly for the future, because we don't know when something like this will happen again. And even if this does not happen again, at least we will have technologies that will enable us continue to verify products throughout the chain using the technologies that are available now and the technologies that will be available in the future. The only one thing I will add is that as scientists, and I'm also other scientists that are listening to this webinar, if we can, actually work harder to try to come up with a way that can that importing countries or at the point of receipt, people are able to use simple techniques to determine whether meat is produced, using halal way or not. And some of the stuff that we are working on currently ourselves here at my own institute is we are trying to see if there are any metabolites, metabolites that are generated due to any of the processes that are involved in halal, right from pre-halal, stunning up to when the animal is slaughtered and processing begins, and when the meat is ready, to see whether there are certain metabolites that are produced uniquely due to any of these actions, so that we'll be able to develop a method, a quick and rapid method that can be used online or that can be used at point of receipt for that meat to be determined whether it is halal or not. Other than that, I wish you all, safe and well in whatever bubble you are living and wherever you are living. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us success on this virus.
All right. Brother Muhammad, you said that there are some questions. We can't see those on the screens. If there are, Dr. Mustafa and I, we will endeavor to respond to those, inshallah.
Okay, so I'll just allow the participants to ask questions. I'll unmute them. So, Sister Roxana, I'm allowing you to talk now if you want to ask any questions. Inshallah.
Here for that information. You're globally well respected. I just wanted to ask about the use of non-Muslim auditors involved in halal certification. What is your view? Jazakallah khair. Thank you.
I think it is important that we have Muslims auditing. And the reason why is that if we look at it from Islamic perspective, if I come to a person's house or business and he is a Muslim and he tell me that meat is halal and I take that meat from him, it is halal for me, even if it is not halal. And I don't need to verify. But if someone who is not a Muslim gives me a meat product and I ask that person whether it is halal or not, even if he said it's halal, I will have to verify. Why do I have to verify? Because there's no onus on this individual, to make sure that something is halal, but also at the same time, he may not understand what halal, itself is, and he is not bound by anything, to determine whether, except, good business practices, to say that something is halal. While, for instance, here we are living in a country where we are working in a system where we trust, the producers. Even when we are not there, we trust that they are going to be honest, they are going to produce it honestly. But it is all boils down to Islamic, perspective and responsibilities. A Muslim, when he gives you something and he says it's halal, even if it's not halal. But any other person who's not a Muslim, then that onus now becomes on you to make sure that it is halal. So that's why it is important in halal certification that we have Muslims doing auditing, we have Muslims doing certification and verification where possible. But that doesn't mean that other people of other faiths cannot be involved in the process. They can be involved in the process in many, throughout the chain, except in certain areas like the slaughter. But there always need to be a Muslim involved in the process. This is my own opinion, and some other people may differ, but I think that that is why we should insist that Muslims are involved throughout the chain wherever we can and whenever we can. Thank you.
Any other question, Mohammed?
We do have one controversial question, and that is that globally, different halal certifiers have different halal standards and methods and technology use. They all, majority of them apply just the one word called halal, and it makes it very difficult for consumers who are buying items that find it very difficult to find out what the initial slaughter process was or what the standard is being adopted. Is there any way that certifiers, would you be willing to do this yourself and encourage others to do, is to clarify what that standard actually is on packaging or on your certificate? Thank you.
Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah. Yes, well, I mean, thank you, sister, for this question. This has been an ongoing struggle. We have always, for us as Fians, we have always considered halal certification a service rather than business. And that's how we approach it. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says clearly that we should facilitate the provision of halal food. And he didn't say, just to Muslims. He said, Ya ayyuhan nas, kulu mimma fil ardi halalan tayyiba. So we consider it always a service. And therefore, we try, to do our best to make sure that whatever we do is done, properly according to, the standards, that are imposed on us by the importing countries, as well as, what, we believe is, halal and, and that can be authenticated. It is really, like you said, very embarrassing, even for us, when we walk into a meat plant, the same meat plant, and then you find that there are more than 1, 2, or 3, or sometimes up to 5 different certifiers certifying the same product. And here we are saying that we are one religion, and we are working from one source, yet you find that there are 5 individuals trying to certify one product, increasing the cost to the processor, which of course the processor will pass on to the consumer in our own poor, Islamic countries. So even for that reason alone, it is important that if we can unify, our own process of certification and make sure that, we have one standard, even if we don't have one certifier, per region or per place, at least there should be one standard. So that if a plant, has to have 5 different individuals because of requirements of different countries, so be it, but at least that they know that we have only one standard. Otherwise, how do I, as a Muslim, walk into a plant that is run by non-Muslims and tell them Islam, is one religion, while he's clearly seen 5 different individuals coming, taking money from them and certifying, products? This is one of the reasons why, things are, for us, is very difficult, because we combine whatever we do, our work and everything that we do has to represent, our own, persons and our religion. And we are trying to use, our own actions and our behaviors as a means of explaining Islam to people. But when people see us coming into a plant, 5 different organizations doing exactly the same thing and collecting money from them, is very difficult to explain. And even for me, for that reason alone, it is important that we find a way that we can streamline and have, a common standard, for halal certification around the world. Whether that will happen or not, only Allah knows. But I think if we, all of us certifiers around the world, look at halal certification as a service rather than a means of making money, then maybe we'll be able to reach, that standard. That's all I can say. I don't know whether Dr. Anwar has more to say.
No, I think, Dr. Mustafa, you have covered the topic. You have responded to the question quite well. I don't have anything else to add, other than to say, like, people like Dr. Mustafa and myself, we don't benefit from halal certification of Fiance in any way financially from that service which Fiance provides. So our livelihood comes from some other sources, not from certification. We are providing our services to Fiance as volunteers. Any other question, Brother Muhammad?
Oh, we have a question from Elvina.
Okay, please.
Yeah.
Yes, Sister Albina. I can't hear anything.
Neither can I.
In this case, fiance, if they don't have any Muslim in determining the halal standard and doing accreditation to the HCB. Thank you.
So, sorry, I didn't
I
get
haven't
the.
heard all the question. Yeah. Can
Yeah.
you repeat the question, please, sister? Because most of it was cut off.
Okay. Based on the explanation that you gave, this regarding the New Zealand management of halal certification, yeah. And my question is, in MPI and the Standard Council advisor, is there any Muslim person be in this team? And then how they accredited the HCB if they don't have any Muslim to do the accreditation? Thank you.
Yeah, I think Anwar can say something, but the way it works in New Zealand is we have a very robust system. If you look at that figure that Anwar presented during his presentation, we have our Ministry of Primary Industry. And in that, that figure there, if you look at the ministry, on top of that ministry, there was a Halal Standard Advisory Council. This Halal Standard Advisory Council is made up of Muslims. And some of us were members of this Halal Standard Advisory Council, made up of scholars and scientists. And so we created a standard working with the Ministry of Primary Industry. In that standard that we as Muslims are involved in creating, that standard became the standard that New Zealand government, through Ministry of Primary Industry, uses in making sure that halal, certification is done properly. So in New Zealand, actually, we have, you can say, almost up to 5 different layers of certification. One, the first primary person that does, certification for us is the person who is the halal slaughter person there. And in most of the plants, also they have a team of halal monitors, or what they call a halal, team within, the plant. And then there's an AHO like fiance. That's the third, level. And then after that level, then we have the Ministry of Primary Industry, who also will come and check based on the standard that we develop together with them. So whether that person is a Muslim or not, within the ministry, that person is using a template that is clearly developed with us. And then on top of that, we have the other ISOs or the other third parties, like Saudi Food and Drugs, GCC, MUI, JAKIM, and other, bodies. So you can see there are 5 layers involved in the production of meat in New Zealand. But within the ministry itself, there are Muslims who are working within the ministry itself. But we are involved in everything that the Ministry of Primary Industry does in terms of halal certification in New Zealand. They just don't do it from government, perspective. We are involved very closely with them, and we are involved in the development of the standards. So that's how it works here in New Zealand. How it works in other countries, I'm not very sure that they have, a system that's as robust as we have here in New Zealand.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other question, Brother Muhammad? While Dr. Mustafa is running hot, let him.
No more questions.
Okay. Well, thank
you very much.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank you, Brother Muhammad, for facilitating this. Thank you, Dr. Hani Al-Mazidi, for your own thoughts and for thinking about us, in the halal world during this lockdown. And thank you for everybody who participated. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us, our families, our
Ameen.
communities, our countries from the scourge of this coronavirus and all other calamities, inshallah.
Inshallah. Ameen, ameen, summa ameen. Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum.
So now we sign out.